Welcome back. As things intensify on the ground and civilians continue to fight back in Ukraine, some are wondering what Russia's strategy is and what could happen next. Russia has made significant advances since last week in the north and southeast, but it has not been the rapid takeover that some had predicted, and Russian forces have not yet taken the capital. We're joined now by Walter Dorn, Professor of Defence Studies at the Royal Military College of Canada and the Canadian Forces College. Walter, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
As you know, a lot of people have been surprised by how slowly the Russian invasion has moved, even more than a week later. What's gone wrong for the Russians?
I think the Russians miscalculated. They miscalculated the resistance of the Ukrainians, the determination of the Ukrainian army to fight, the determination of the Ukrainian people to support the military and indeed to fight themselves. I think that the Russians also underestimated the powerful effects of sanctions. And so it's causing Russia to have some second thoughts. And I think that that's a really good measure to have second thoughts at this point for Russia.
We're getting a lot of questions from viewers about a no-fly zone. The Ukrainians would like one established. NATO has refused to do that. Why not use the air power of NATO countries to keep the Russians out of Ukrainian skies?
NATO managed during the entire Cold War to avoid direct confrontation with Russia. And now if NATO were to use its air power and shoot down Russian planes, Russia would consider that an act of war and then be in a war with the nation that shot down the planes or the alliance. And that could escalate. I mean, we have the possibility that under such a scenario, that it could escalate all the way to the unthinkable, that is nuclear war. So NATO has to be very careful not to directly engage with Russia in a military confrontation. And I think it's very wise that NATO to do indirect support for Ukraine, but not directly engage in a fight with Russia.
And so speaking of that indirect support, that includes aid and that includes lethal weaponry from allied countries, including Canada. Do you think Ukraine is getting what it needs?
I think it needs a lot more, but the weapons are flowing in. The surface-to-air missiles and anti-tank missiles are coming in. These are really potent weapons to be able to deal with an invasion force from Russia. So I think they're getting support, but they can certainly use more on the humanitarian side and on the arms side.
I'm seeing some dire predictions about what might happen over the next few days, that we may be entering a particularly dark period of this war. What's your view?
I think that it's can get very dark. Russia has an unused capacity now, dozens of kilometers of convoys that are waiting, for instance, for an attack on Kyiv. It could be that they would surround it and do siege warfare with shelling and all kinds of damage inside Kyiv. That could cause major civilian casualties. So the possibility of increasing dire humanitarian situation is very real. And in cities like Mariupol, it's already happening. The siege is happening, and the Ukrainians are not able to get the resources, both the military and the humanitarian, the actual means to sustain their lives from the outside. So there's really a need for humanitarian assistance as well as military assistance.
And it appears we're seeing Russian attacks on civilians. Do you think that's intentional? And if it is, why?
I think Russia is getting extra desperate. They didn't expect this resistance from the Ukrainian population and the Ukrainian military. And so they are being looser with the rules of engagement. And they're, in some cases, deliberately targeting facilities. There's examples where it can't be just collateral damage. There are missiles into universities. There are attacks on press cars. There are so many examples of disrespect for the rules of war that we're seeing a Russia that's violating international law and the rules of warfare.
Walter Dorn, thank you very much for your analysis. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Ian.